Lord have mercy. Welcome to Delilah. We have a call in from our listener, Kelly. If you look at the letter Boo, no, she loves him, and she's thinking about him from across the country. Here's little Richard Marks going out to Kelly's Boo.
Oh my
I
God, do
love
you know?
how juicy my mouth sounds.
Ew, it's like ASMR or whatever they call that. Somebody somewhere is really enjoying that sound. Wouldn't you?
100%.
I love that you just referenced Richard Marx. Have I ever told you I was working with him for a while?
Shut up. I'm so jealous. I love Richard Marks so much.
Literally, it was one of those. This was back when I was in my 20s. So this was forever.
You need to get him back as a client.
I know. He was living in Nashville for a minute.
I
But
think he still has a house here, I think. Yeah.
really?
Mm-hmm.
Who the fuck is doing his grooming? I'm just kidding.
I'll hit his manager right now.
Yeah. It was one of those childhood moments of like, what is my life? You know, like when you
Right.
just have those full circle moments. I remember being at the aquatic club in Baton Rouge, hearing Richard Marx songs and just dying. Like I would be doing dances and,
Oh
such a
yeah.
fan. So then
I'm
to
a
work
huge
with him
fan.
later.
Back maybe I shouldn't have. I mean, whatever. When I lived in LA, I was like had this like obsession about him, and he was starting to like, it had been a while. No one was really talking about him, but he was like slowly starting to make his comeback. And I
Okay.
saw him at the El Rey, and I was just trying to get anyone I could to like be into Richard Marx with me. So I burned a lot of copies of his greatest hits, and I would just give them to people as gifts and make them listen to it with me. I
You're like
literally had
his
a box
promo
of
guy.
them. I know, I was like his promo guy.
But you
I was
don't
like,
make any money
please just
doing
love
it.
Richard Marx. My friend Lita, who I don't think listens to this, but shout out to Lita if she does. She got on board with me, like, because we worked together, so we would have to like drive to shows in like Riverside and stuff. And I'd be like, this is a Richard Marx ride, and it's all we're gonna listen to.
Oh my God.
She was on board. Oh my God, he's 62 years old.
I mean, I knew he was probably in his almost well, if I'm 43, math is hard for me. I don't know. I
Yeah.
felt like he was like
That's
early
15 years.
50s.
Oh no. That's almost 20 years older than you.
Yeah,
43
but
to
I
62,
felt
yeah.
like when I was working with him, he was in his young 50s.
Got it.
So what is he,
Okay.
60 what?
62.
Okay, so 12 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he was late 40s. It's like what we were talking about last week where you thought people were so much older
So
and
much
now it's
older,
like
yeah.
my age. Yeah.
He looks good for his age.
Oh yeah, he's a very handsome guy and he
He's
was
really
married
handsome.
to
He's in great shape. Daisy Fuentes
Oh,
is
that's
his wife.
new. See, that's new since we worked together because he was married to some woman that was in Dirty Dancing. I think she was the blonde dancer that danced with Patrick Swayze.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think they were married for a long time. I
Uh,
love that we're just taking listeners on this deep
I
dive back
mean,
into
if you aren't
blast from the
familiar,
past.
Cynthia Rhodes, yeah, she was an actress and a dancer.
Was it the blonde girl from Dirty
Yeah,
Dancing?
yeah, she was known as Penny from Dirty
Yes,
Dancing.
Penny. Yes.
She was also Tina Tech in Flashdance. And
Okay.
Jackie in Staying Alive, and Officer Karen Thompson in Runaway.
Wow.
Wow.
Well, we've given Richard Marx a lot of energy, but we didn't mention Delilah, which you just really took me
Oh.
back on that as well. I love that I started the podcast and you just launched into something.
Delilah I mean, still is.
Still, I'm still obsessed with her. We
Yeah.
used to listen when she had her tagline was Delilah, and then another voice comes in and goes, "Love someone tonight." And we were like,
I
"Oh my
love
God."
it.
She has like 14 kids or something
I know
ridiculous.
it's like a million children.
And they're all
Good for her.
adopted, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, she's a saint.
She really is. And she really helped a lot of people in relationship, which is an interesting transition. That's why I was like, you know
Ooh.
what? We're just going to start because
We're just gonna talk Delilah.
we're,
Can we get
yeah.
Delilah on here?
Oh my God. What if Delilah came on? You know, she would be one that I would probably be nervous to interview because she's been interviewing for so long. And those people are sometimes intimidating because you're like, they know the program.
Mm-hmm.
They know how to do this. They could
Well,
be
she has a
leading this interview
podcast now too.
themselves.
It's called Love Someone.
Tonight.
Well, and she we might have a way to get to her because it looks like she posted about Lady A 2 days ago. So
Oh my God.
So
You guys.
our friends know how to get to Delilah. So if you're listening, yeah.
Anyway, we are on relationships today, and I told you, Chip, that I had Thais Gibson back on the podcast on Wednesday. I love her. She is a wealth of knowledge about relationships. She has something called the Personal Development School, where she used to be a therapist for many years, and then she's created this school where you can do these different programs or buy these different programs and complete the programs, but they're really like helping you learn about how to be in relationships. So she does a lot of
Mhm.
work around like attachment theory, but she came on the podcast because she has a new program about the 6 stages of relationships. And I was telling you and I were talking about this last night, and I find it to be such an interesting topic because it feels so anti the way we are presented relationships. Like I
Yeah.
think we're presented in our society that they are supposed to be this fairy tale. You meet someone, you
Prince
fall in
Charming.
love, you meet Prince Charming that's going to rescue you on the white horse.
Mhm.
It's just the fairy tale. And then maybe you get married, and then all of a sudden you hear a lot of people saying, well, it's not what I thought it was going to be. Or,
Reality sets in,
everyone says
yeah.
the first year of marriage is the hardest year. And it's because there's actually 6 stages of a relationship to get to this blissful love era where you really do have a steady foundation within that relationship and with your partner, and we don't talk about that. So when people get to these different stages that are a necessary route to the thing we all want, I believe, a lot of times people dip out because they're like, "This isn't what I thought it should be." And I thought
Right.
that's a really interesting thing to think about, isn't it?
Mhm. I mean, I think about a couple of my friends who I think are in some of the happiest marriages that I've witnessed,
Okay.
and I remember both of them, but I was friends with the women in the relationships before they got married, and now I'm friends with their husbands, but, um, I can clearly remember both of them when they met these future husbands of theirs telling me that they met their husband
Mhm.
and, that they they thought he was ugly. And I think it's a really interesting point because they were honest about it, but they were like, "It wasn't what I was expecting, but this guy's
Right.
everything I've wanted," you know?
Yes.
And I think, I bring that up because we're gonna get into sort of Love Being Blind, and, that's obviously very trendy with, the television show that's a big hit, but I do think that, the root of a lot of our problems are the superficial things that come along with dating. You need someone with a lot of money, you need someone that's gonna take care of you, you need someone that looks really good, you need someone that's well endowed, someone that's got big tits, whatever it is, and, we're missing the point. Like, we need
Mhm.
someone who's gonna love us for who we are, and that ultimately, I think when you get through the 6 steps of dating or relationship is sort of where you land. It's like someone that sees you and chooses you and is willing to fight with you to keep you you. And I think that's a really hard thing for any of us to stomach. And a lot of us go into dating trying to be this like perfect version of ourselves or like even falsify who we are
For
just
sure.
to win the acceptance of the hottest person in the room, and I think that makes it really dangerous, there's nothing that's sustainable about that unless you're really fucking lucky, like
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I don't think that we necessarily even discuss what real love looks like. I think we
Right.
have fairy tale love. I think we have
Yeah.
storybook love. I think we have movie love. And then a lot of us, it's the same as I feel about sex. It's like we just kind of stop learning about it. Like you just have this idea that you created somewhere along the lines in childhood. We all bring baggage from whatever it is.
Mhm.
But we have this idea and we go looking after that idea. Like you said, it could be anything that's superficial, even. And we're like, oh, then if I find the hottest person in the world, then I'll be happy in a relationship and we'll build this fantasy life with a picket fence or whatever it is that you desire in your life. And we miss, oh, there's another human in this relationship too, with all their own baggage and all their own narratives and all their own desires and dreams, that we have to learn to basically almost run a business with,
A
is what it
yeah,
is.
fit
Like,
them into your life and your
work
dreams.
together. Yes, like how to compromise. Um, and I just, yeah, it's just really kind of wild to me that we're not taught that ever. And so I think when you see couples in relationship later down the line that are either going through some of these phases or they have gone through them, there can be different outcomes because it's like if they're going through the stages, you might be going, ooh, maybe they need to break up. Like if they're in a
Right.
power struggle stage, maybe it doesn't look so pretty, but it's how you learn to work together. And can you do that? Or are you just going after each other and it's not going anywhere and it's going around in a circle? There's a lot of different things that I think can be indicators of, okay, this does need to go to the next step or this does need to end. So, anyway, Thais and I really broke all of that down and she taught me a lot about the 6 stages. But I did keep bringing up Love is Blind to her because I just was watching the new season. And I know you've watched some seasons. I don't think you've
Yeah, I've
watched this
watched like I
one.
think the first 2.
This
I
one,
gave up.
like, spoiler alert, if anyone is watching, I'm warning you right now. I'm about to say what happened. So go ahead and mute this, turn it off, whatever. But this season, nobody gets married. And
Well,
it's
wasn't this the first season, and I haven't watched it, but someone told me it's the first season that the people are the most average looking too. Like
yeah,
in seasons before, like no one's arguably like the hottest thing in the world, but everyone's like arguably
good
attractive.
looking.
And this season finally had some just like really average people.
That's probably true. Yeah, but there's also some really pretty people. So
Yeah, okay.
it wasn't anything that stood out to me as overwhelmingly, ooh, these people are not cute.
I kind of wish that that's how the show was. Like I wish that it was like there were bigger surprises,
Mm,
like and not to tokenize anybody, but like the world is made up of a lot of people. Like there should be overweight people, there should be handicapped people, there should again, they're selling the false narrative of the Prince Charming, like
because of
um
looks, you mean? It's
because
almost,
of
yeah, because
looks.
they
And
connect and they're like, is
I
love
would love
blind?
to
But then
see a
everybody's
surprise
hot.
where yeah, I would love to see a surprise where this beautiful woman ends up with like a chubby bald dude because she connected with his spirit.
Yeah.
And but it's the programming goes all the way back to our childhood. Like not to harp on the Prince Charming thing, but like it's always a beautiful like damsel in distress with a hot prince on a white horse. And then there's like the ogre and the ugly troll. And it's like we're set up to think that that is what, you know, we're supposed to fit in with in terms of
Mhm.
relationships. And it's just a bunch of BS.
Yeah. Do you ever think through the confusing chemistry and connection piece? Like, because you're talking a lot about being really good looking. And I think what Love is Blind is trying to do is actually find true connection with people and
Right.
take out that physical piece of it. But again, you still have to have chemistry, like emotional chemistry or conversational chemistry, or, you have to connect with people. So it's still kind of the same thing. But I do think we get that one a little confused in our world. Like, if you're so attracted to someone and you have that racing heart, often we're like, "Oh my god, I'm so into that person." But if you really dive into therapeutic practices with this, a lot of times that can be coming from a dysfunctional place.
Yeah.
And if we
Just the
feel the
like the
butterflies or the heart
desire to
racing,
connect. Yeah.
well, and
Versus
it's
true
coming from a
connection.
wound often.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you met someone who is reenacting the same wound you have in relationship with one of your parents or something like that. And so
Or
that's what
they're filling a narrative that you've imagined, and you're
yeah,
like, "Oh, this is the person," and you're ignoring all of the other
right.
potential red flags or signs. Yeah, no, well, first of all, what is the more important one when it comes to relationship? Is it connection or chemistry?
What do you think?
Um, Look, I think I can connect with a lot of people, but I don't know that I have
Mm,
chemistry with a lot of people.
interesting.
Um, but I also think too, like you could have chemistry and have like wild sex with someone and not connect in any real way. And ultimately, I think, um, you have to be in lockstep with your partner for a relationship to work. It doesn't necessarily have to be like, um, you know, chemistry the whole time. I feel like
Mhm.
true connection is probably the stronger bond.
I always heard you need 2 things to have a relationship, the right timing and, compatibility. So, I mean,
Mhm.
compatibility, I don't know, could involve chemistry and connection
Yeah.
ultimately. But I think you can be really compatible with somebody, but y'all could be in totally bad or different times of your life,
Right.
and that could be a factor of it not working. Or you could be in the right time, y'all both want the same things, but you're not compatible and you don't have the right chemistry and connection. So I guess I would say both is important, but I
Hmm.
think long lasting, you definitely need to be able to connect with your partner
Yeah.
because as you said, like you can't just be magnetic towards each other. And that's where I think the trauma from the past can get a little bit like dicey if you haven't worked through that.
Well, because chemistry probably is that, like, you feel that butterfly-y thing
Mhm.
more. So it's like a physical reaction too. Um,
Which they
and you
say,
know,
like, when you meet the person that isn't activating your nervous system, like what we're talking about, it's gonna feel calm, and you're
yeah,
gonna feel, like, more peaceful than the butterfly, like, the feeling, you
right,
know?
right, yeah.
Which is it's just hard to decipher all the time because obviously, like, you wanna be attracted to the person you're with, and you wanna be drawn to them and excited about them and all those things, but I think it's just also about monitoring. Like, I remember meeting my boyfriend for our first date, and we had been talking on the phone, and we also had known each other a long time, so I already knew, like, he's hot, all those kind of things.
Right, right.
But I spent 2 months talking to him on the phone because he lives somewhere else, and so, like, we really connected too, but then on our first date, I remember feeling nervous before, but then getting with him and feeling calm, if that makes sense, and that was, like, a really
Maybe you
good.
felt excited and not nervous, and you
That's true,
confused the
yeah,
2.
maybe it was more
Yeah.
like well, it was also, is what we've been doing for the last 2 months going to translate into real life and, like, work when we're in front of each other? Because we had had such great conversation. I mean, sometimes we would spend, like, 5 hours on the phone, we would just, like, lose track of time talking to each other, you know? And then there was almost this, like, pressure when we met for the
Well,
first
you'd
time, like
invested. Yeah, like,
yeah,
you
like,
feel
is
super
it or
invested.
is this gonna be really awkward and we're not gonna be able
You've
to,
already
like
talked about everything.
yeah.
You're like, this soup is so good."
Yeah, okay. Remember that one time we were talking about like yeah,
Yeah, you're like, "Well, if we hadn't spent 5 hours on the phone talking about it, we might have
yeah,
something to talk about today." Yeah, I mean, look, I think that butterfly feeling too is often, it's, in the same way that we just said that excitement and fear sort of feel the same way.
yeah,
It's, are those butterflies something that is also the fear of rejection that is,
right.
like, making you feel this thing where you're like, "Oh my god, I really want them to like me. I want them to like me. I want them to like
Pick
me,"
me,
and
pick
it's not
me.
your body being like, "Oh my god, this is a real connection."
Mhm.
Um, so, yeah, I'm back to the question that I posed. I go connection. I think that is truly the more important thing. And back to the story about my 2 friends that said that they met these ugly guys, who, by the way, aren't that ugly. They're
Well,
just not. They're
I
not that
really hope
like.
they don't listen.
I don't think they listen, but they didn't fit the mold, but they felt this like massive connection to them and believed out of the gate like, holy shit, like I just met my soulmate, and they knew, and I'll never forget that. So I do think it's important, especially when we live in an economy now where we're like swiping left and right and everyone is two-dimensional on a phone. um it I think that serves the chemistry part more than the connection part, because I know myself, like, I'm lazy when it comes to, like, putting together my profile because it all feels like a waste of time now. So yeah, I think that we need to figure out a way to get back into the dating space that centers more on connection versus chemistry,
But
if that
chemistry
makes
doesn't just have to be like attraction, right? Like, cause I feel like chemistry, you could have emotional chemistry, mental chemistry with people. Like, it could be a bigger picture. So it
yeah,
kind of is both. But I think what you're saying is don't just base it on attraction and the external, like good on paper kind of shit.
right.
And it's
Yes.
interesting about when you were talking about your friends. I do think something that another point that maybe you're kind of dancing around is we have this idea of just the magical falling in love, like the fairy tale, but we don't ever talk about building love and like
Right.
what the connection, the true connection with someone looks like and the process of that. And that's really what Thais is doing with this 6 stages work is like, hey, there's a full dating stage, and yes, that's really fun, but that's also the time where you really need to do your due diligence and, like, get to know a person. Do they actually align with you? Like, really digging into that process of vetting and not just jumping into something because it's there and you've been lonely or, whatever. It's like, really, does this person align with what I'm looking for ultimately in a value system, in a partner, in a foundation? And can we build with each other?
Right.
Then you go into the honeymoon phase, which is all magical. And I said to her, I was like, oh, I love the honeymoon phase. Like, it's the best phase. And it is. It's so fun and exciting. Then you get to power struggle though, which is like that's when you were saying everyone's almost showing up with their representative, but then it's the power struggle stage, like shit gets real and everyone's
Yeah.
seeing all sides of a person. Hopefully you've done your vetting and you've really like fallen in love in the honeymoon stage so that you want to work through the power struggles phase, like, with each other, but, like,
Hmm.
that's where a lot of people break up because the second stuff gets hard, we don't have a blueprint for how to do that, and so we dip
Right.
out.
Yeah. I know that for me, that's where my faults come into play.
In what
Um,
way?
well, just it's and now that I'm almost 50, it's like I feel like it's even harder because I'm more set in my ways. I know that in my last relationship, it was one of those things where it's like and a lot of it was unspoken. I couldn't see myself moving into his house and I couldn't see him living in mine. And it like that's not necessarily a power struggle, but it is, it's like there's a lot of compromise in that. But I also wasn't ready to leave my house to like go get at one with him. And I think in those moments, that's where you have to like sort of dig deep and be like, ask yourself, well, why can't I see that? Is it
Right.
something that I want to see or is it something that I don't want to see? But I also was like, hyper aware of the fact that like if the relationship was going to progress any further, like those things needed to be something that I could envision.
Mhm.
And then, there were other power struggle things that I see in hindsight. That's exactly the phase that we were in was the power struggle phase
Mhm.
because there were, my friendships were coming into play and my work was coming into play and um his friendships were coming into play. So, it was when you sent me the six steps, it was really easy to see. I could look back at my relationships and be like, the power struggle one is I think the one that I have the most trouble with.. Even though I think
Right.
that like I feel like I'm so like open and willing to like sacrifice and do all the things and I'm like, well, maybe I'm not.
It's harder than we all wanna think. I think we
Yeah.
all want to think, "Oh, I'm so good at compromise," and, "Oh, I'm so whatever," but we all are set in our ways, or you see life through your perspective. So it
Yes.
to be really truly be in a relationship where you're like, looking at someone else's perspective and compromising and working together takes more effort than I think anyone wants to actually admit.
Right, right.
But it also like, we talked about that on the podcast on Wednesday. The reason so many people leave in the power struggle stage is like you are getting real. So it could have been the thing where you were realizing, okay, hey, when we were in the honeymoon phase, we weren't fully being honest about who we are, what our goals are, like our foundation stuff maybe isn't as aligned. And so maybe we're not as compatible, like we were saying at the beginning, or it's when you learn how to fight with each other, work together, accept the other person's jobs. Like, for instance, my boyfriend and I in the last week and a half have been in these little like roundabout, they're not fights, but we've been stuck on a loop of the same conversation. And it's been a season for me where I've been really busy. And so I was feeling like I was doing all this stuff and he was feeling like he's doing all, and we're just if you don't communicate, it's easy for things to get blown up. Well, we were just talking today about all of it and kind of I was just like, let's just try to get to a place of resolve. And I realized we are able to the reason I think, like, our relationship is working and why we've been able to maintain for now is because whenever we get to these places, we really both have the goal of trying to hear the other person's perspective and, like, listening and actually just holding space for it, regardless of if we agree or not. Like, he and I are
Right,
very
right.
different people, and we live very different types of lives. And so it does take a lot of like just like open conversation sometimes of and we're also long distance. So like we have to be communicating about how to make that work or it's going to fall off. And so
Right,
but
yeah.
what I respect about him and like the way we've been able to move together is that we can have these conversations and I've never had that before where you can actually like find the workable solution for both people if that makes sense.
Yeah. The, I think it's really easy to fall into a pattern of where you feel like you're in a relationship and you're fighting with the person a lot. I think that's the distinction that you have to make. Like, are you fighting with them or for them?
Mm,
And I think sadly, human nature is we're all selfish in ways because it's a
defensive too.
yeah, it's a and I don't mean selfish in like the sort of traditional sense of the word, but like we're all protecting ourselves. We're trying to survive, and in doing that, we have to be selfish. We have to put ourselves first. Um,
Self-focused a little bit,
yeah,
maybe.
self-focused. And so when you're fighting for something, I think it's really important to make it clear, which it sounds like you all are doing, that you're fighting for the other person, that you're not
I
fighting
literally
with.
said those words today. I was like, I think the goal of this conversation just has to be like, how do we fight for the relationship to be the best environment for both of us in these
Right,
seasons where
right.
life is like pulling us in two different directions or whatever. And because that was both of our goals, you resolve it. Like
Yes.
and it doesn't
You're
mean
like,
like
"Oh, I hear you. I see
yeah, and I
that."
can
Yeah.
if I get out of my own way, I can always see his side.
Yeah.
It's just like I think our human nature makes us want to defend our side and see it and
Correct.
be heard and seen, and that is important, and so I need him to do that for me too. And sometimes it takes us like a couple conversations to get to to that, like we
Yeah,
don't
of
do it
course.
perfectly. But I just think it's important for all of us to talk about this so that we're setting ourselves up, one, for reality, like realistic expectations, but two, also success. Because this, to me, like what Thais is doing with these 6 steps, is the way to get what I think most people are seeking. But we get stuck. And she did mention that you said you get stuck in this power struggle stage, or you feel like that's kind of where things end for you. And she was like, if you find yourself to getting stuck in the same phase in every relationship, there's probably like some sort of barrier within you that needs to be looked at.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's something to think about. But to me, that's helpful because it's like the only way out is through. And the only way any of us ever change is by looking at the reality of what we keep bumping up against. And it's not always pleasant, but it does take us deeper and it does get us to what we want most of the time.
Right, right, yeah. So what's the phase after the power struggle?
I can't remember the name of it, and you just put me on the
Oh.
spot,
Oh, wait, I
but
have it. I have it. I have
oh,
your
you
notes.
do?
It was a stability stage, which
Yes.
is really interesting because if you think about, two people that are seemingly disagreeing, but if they're truly fighting for the same thing, um, and you can come to, some sort of agreement or understanding that, like, what's that famous saying? Like, we can agree to disagree, which
Mhm.
is, I mean, it sounds like such a way to just end an argument, but it's actually a really interesting
It's
sort of
always
like
something I do as a
visual
jab. I'm
because
like,
it's
"Agree to
like,
disagree."
yeah, I mean, it's fine. We don't all have to agree on the same
No.
things. We can disagree on things, but you can, like, in a way, you're saying, like, look, I get your point. You're never going to get mine. I'm never going to fully get yours in the way that you see it, but like, I love you. We need to fucking make this work. Let's
Well,
figure it
and you
out.
can I think, like, one of the things that I've been working on is if I don't see it through the same lens, truly trying to embrace it through someone else's lens and respect that lens. Like,
Right.
in my former days, I think I would go like bump up against that, and I wouldn't have certain amount of respect for certain people's life lenses, and that's not fair because we're all truly, I say this all the time on the podcast, like we're here on different journeys. So how unfair of me to be like, well, your lens and the way you see the world is just a dumber version of mine or something, like
Right,
that's not what
right.
I think. But that I'm just giving that as an example. That would be unfair, I believe. And so the goal being to truly allow this for the space, like, and not just agree to disagree, but also like, hey, but I respect where you're coming from. My life experience or my perspective is different because of this. And hopefully they see where you're coming from because of that. And that's when you can get into stability, I think, is when you learn. For me, it's been knowing that when we bump up against these things, like we are going to work through it with each other. And we're also going to hold the relationship at high value still.
Mm-hmm.
So we will work to get back to ground zero or whatever. And that having that steady foundation does help with your stability. So it's like, when because life just be life, and like when life
Yeah.
gets wild or whatever, even if you get a little bumpy with each other, you're like, okay, but we've done this before. We know how to fight through this. We know the conversations we need to have or movements we need to take. And it just feels a lot more stable, not so like threatening to the relationship,
Right, right. Yeah.
which I have not always had. So anyway, I just think it's important to discuss because the older I've gotten, the more I've realized how misguided most of us are on what actual love and true, like, connecting relationships look like. So I love Thais's work for that. You guys can go hear our full conversation on the Wednesday episode and also just check out her work. She has her own podcast. The Personal Development School is amazing as well, and the work they're doing. So I'll put all of that in the description of this podcast so you guys can go check it out. We always want to know what you think or what you're going through in your relationships as well. So you can email us at theedge@velvetsedge.com. You can hit me up on Instagram. I'm at Velvet's Edge. Chip.
I'm a set at Velvet's Edge. I'm at Chip Dorsch. We're like laughing at each other. ChipDorsch.
We
We
also
need the
have the
weekend.
Velvet's Edge podcast. Yeah. Thank God it's Friday, guys.
Oh my God.
TGIF. All right, as you guys go into the weekend and you're living on the edge, I hope you always remember to
Act casual.
bye.
Bye.